I was 40 minutes late to my mother-in-law's anniversary dinner when I pulled into her circular driveway in Westchester County. My phone had 17 missed calls. As I rushed toward the door, I could already hear the familiar laughter floating through the open windows, the kind that meant someone was being talked about, not with. That someone was usually me. "Well, look who finally decided to grace us with her presence," my mother-in-law Diane announced as I stepped into the dining room. 12 faces turned to stare. My husband Mark gave me an apologetic glance before looking away. His sister Bethany smirked over her wine glass. "I'm so sorry," I said, sliding into the only empty chair. "There was an emergency at—" "Sweetie, we've heard all your emergencies before," Diane cut in. "We started without you. Your plate's probably cold by now." I nodded, swallowing the explanation that I'd spent the last 2 hours helping an elderly man who'd fallen outside my office building, waiting for the ambulance, then driving him home when he refused to go to the hospital. Some things weren't worth explaining to people who'd already decided who you were. What I didn't know then was that the old man had asked for my business card, or that he would show up 40 minutes later, walking into Diane's perfectly choreographed dinner party, a dinner that would end with my mother-in-law's face drained of color and the family hierarchy shattered beyond repair. From the moment I married Mark 6 years ago, I became the family project, the charity case who somehow snagged the golden sun. My background wasn't prestigious enough for the Harrises. I grew up in a small apartment in Queens with a single mom who worked 2 jobs. No summer homes, no private schools, no trust funds. Diane never let me forget it. "We just have different standards, dear," she'd say when I brought the wrong wine or used the wrong fork. Her Manhattan penthouse was a minefield of opportunities for me to fail, and she documented each one meticulously. Mark's father, Richard, a prominent cardiologist, was kinder but distant. He mostly watched from behind his newspaper while Diane orchestrated her social chess games. Bethany, Mark's younger sister, had mastered her mother's talent for the sweet-voiced insult by age 12. During my first Thanksgiving with them, I'd volunteered to make my mom's pumpkin pie, the one thing that connected me to holidays before she passed away. When I proudly brought it to the table, Diane took one bite, pressed her napkin to her lips, and said, "How rustic. Bethany, bring out the pies from Magnolia Bakery." I still remember standing there, holding my lopsided pie while everyone awkwardly avoided eye contact. Everyone except Mark, who served himself a huge slice and declared it delicious. That was Mark, caught between loyalty to his family and defending me. Last Christmas was when things really escalated. The Harrises had a tradition of extravagant gifts, status symbols more than tokens of affection. I'd been saving for months to buy Mark an expensive watch. When he opened it, Diane glanced at her husband and said, "Oh, that looks just like the one your father had in college." Minutes later, Bethany handed Mark a small box containing keys to a sports car parked outside. My gift was instantly forgotten. That night, lying in our guest room bed, I told Mark I was done with family holidays. He begged me to reconsider, promising things would get better. "Mom's planning their 30th anniversary party," he said. "It's important to her. Please, come, for me." Against my better judgment, I agreed. What no one in the family knew was that I'd been working on something big for the past 2 years, a startup connecting medical professionals with underserved communities. I'd poured every spare dollar and minute into it, working nights and weekends. The Harrises assumed I was still just an office manager at a small nonprofit, barely making ends meet. 3 weeks before Diane's anniversary dinner, I met with Gerald Winters, a notoriously private venture capitalist known for funding healthcare innovations. He'd agreed to hear my pitch, but the meeting had gone poorly. He'd seemed distracted, unimpressed. The secret I carried to that anniversary dinner was that I'd finally secured funding, not from Gerald Winters, but from another investor who believed in my vision. After years of struggle and doubt, I was about to become CEO of my own company. I hadn't even told Mark yet. I wanted to surprise him when everything was finalized. I never expected the funding announcement would become ammunition in a family war I didn't start. And I certainly never expected Gerald Winters would be the one to deliver it. Diane's anniversary dinner was being held at their Westchester estate, a colonial revival monstrosity with 6 bedrooms and a view of the Hudson. Mark had gone ahead early to help set up, leaving me to drive up after work. That's when I spotted Gerald Winters struggling with his cane outside my office building, groceries scattered across the sidewalk. I didn't recognize him at first without his tailored suit. He was just an elderly man who needed help. I gathered his groceries, helped him to a bench, and called an ambulance when he mentioned chest pain. When the paramedics arrived, he refused to go to the hospital. "Just need my medication at home," he insisted. So I drove him 40 minutes in the opposite direction of where I needed to be. He lived in a surprisingly modest apartment in Queens, not far from where I grew up. When I helped him inside, I noticed the framed photos of hospitals and medical facilities. Only then did I realize who he was. "You're the young woman with the rural telemedicine proposal," he said, recognizing me too. "Small world." I nodded, already checking my watch. "I really have to go, Mr. Winters. Family dinner." He insisted on taking my business card before I left. "I've been thinking about your pitch," he said. "Perhaps I was hasty in my assessment." By the time I arrived at Diane's, I was frazzled and running late. The anniversary dinner was in full swing. Crystal glasses, fine china, and judgmental stares all around. 20 people were seated at the long dining table, including some family friends I'd never met. "We saved you a seat right at the end," Diane said, gesturing to the one chair without a place setting. A server hurriedly brought me a plate while I felt every eye on me. "So glad you could fit us into your busy schedule," Bethany said, twirling her pearl necklace, a gift from Daddy for her recent promotion at his friend's law firm. Mark squeezed my hand under the table. "Everything okay?" he whispered. "Fine," I said. "Just had an emergency." I didn't elaborate. They'd heard it all before. My excuses, my failures to live up to the Harris standard of punctuality and propriety. Diane stood to propose a toast. "To 30 years with the most wonderful man," she said, raising her glass to Richard. "And to family, those who make the effort to be present for important occasions." Her eyes flicked meaningfully to me. The dinner progressed with the usual dynamics. Diane held court, Bethany played the perfect daughter, showing off her engagement ring from her investment banker fiancé. The conversation circled through vacation homes, stock portfolios, and country club memberships, the Harris family language of status and belonging. "So," Diane turned to me during dessert, voice dripping with false concern, "Mark tells me you're still at that little charity office? Answering phones and such?" Before I could answer, Mark jumped in. "Mom, Sarah manages their entire operation." "Of course she does." Diane smiled tightly. "How nice that they value her unique abilities." Richard, attempting to be kind, added, "Not everyone needs to be career-driven. Someone has to keep the home fires burning." I bit my tongue, thinking of the contracts waiting in my email inbox, the investors who had just committed 7 figures to my company. For once, I had something that would impress even them. But I wanted to tell Mark first, privately. "Actually," I started, "I've been working on—" The doorbell rang, interrupting me. "Are we expecting anyone else?" Richard asked Diane. She frowned, checking her meticulous guest list. No, everyone's accounted for. I'll get it, Mark offered, but one of the servers had already gone to the door. Moments later, the server returned with a confused expression. Ma'am, there's an elderly gentleman asking for, he looked at me, a Sarah Miller? Every head turned toward me. Diane's expression hardened. You invited someone to our anniversary dinner without asking? No, Before I could finish, Gerald Winters appeared in the doorway, leaning on his cane, looking surprisingly determined for a man who'd nearly collapsed hours earlier. I apologize for the intrusion, he said, his voice stronger than it had been that afternoon, but I needed to speak with Miss Miller immediately. The room fell silent. Diane looked like she'd swallowed something sour. And you are? Gerald stepped fully into the dining room, surveying the opulent setting with an unimpressed glance. Gerald Winters, I believe your son's wife saved my life today. The dining room went deadly quiet. Gerald Winters was a household name in certain circles, particularly the wealthy, investment-focused circles the Harrises inhabited. Gerald Winters? Richard stood abruptly, napkin falling to the floor. The Gerald Winters? Diane's eyes widened as recognition dawned. Her social radar was impeccable. She knew exactly who had just walked into her perfect dinner party. Mr. Winters, what an unexpected pleasure. Please join us. We can set another place. That won't be necessary, Gerald said, his eyes finding mine. I just came to speak with Sarah. I stood, acutely aware of everyone watching this bizarre scene unfold. Mr. Winters, are you feeling better? You should be resting. I'm fine, thanks to you. He turned to address the table. This young woman found me collapsed on the sidewalk today. She called an ambulance, then drove me home when I stubbornly refused to go to the hospital. He chuckled. Probably saved my life. My doctor later confirmed it was a minor cardiac event. Diane's expression shifted between confusion and calculation. How wonderful, she said, voice honeyed. Sarah's always running late because she's helping someone. Isn't that right, dear? The condescension in her tone was unmistakable. 5 years of similar jabs flashed through my mind. Every dismissal, every raised eyebrow, every time she'd treated my work as insignificant. Gerald seemed to catch it too, his eyebrows raised slightly. Actually, he said, that's not why I'm here. I came because after Sarah left, I reviewed her business proposal again, the rural telemedicine platform. He turned to me. I've decided to fully fund your startup. $10 million, as requested. My lawyers will drop the paperwork tomorrow. The room erupted in gasps. Mark stared at me, mouth open. Startup? What startup? Bethany's wine glass froze halfway to her lips. You have a company? Gerald continued as if no one had spoken. Your ideas about connecting specialists with rural hospitals could revolutionize healthcare access. I was wrong to dismiss it initially. Diane recovered first, social reflexes kicking in. Well, what a lovely surprise. We always knew Sarah had potential. She forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Mark, did you know your wife was meeting with Gerald Winters? Before Mark could answer, I found my voice. 5 years of swallowed replies surged forward. No, he didn't know. Nobody knew, because none of you ever asked what I was working on. You were all too busy assuming I had nothing valuable to contribute. I turned to Diane directly. You've made me feel small at every opportunity, made sure I knew I wasn't good enough for your son or your family. Tonight I was late because I was helping someone in need, which you immediately dismissed as another excuse. My hands were shaking, but my voice was steady. For the record, I've been developing this company for 2 years, working nights and weekends. I've pitched to 27 investors. I've built a team of doctors and engineers who believe in the vision. I never mentioned it because I wanted to succeed or fail on my own terms, not have it become another thing for you to judge. Mark stood, reaching for my hand. Sarah, I had no idea. I know you didn't, I said, softer. I wanted to surprise you when it was finalized. I turned back to Gerald. Thank you for your faith in the project, Mr. Winters. I should get you home. You've had a long day. Nonsense, he said. My driver is outside. I just wanted to deliver the news in person. He handed me a business card. Call my office tomorrow, and congratulations, CEO. With that, he nodded to the stunned room and walked out. I grabbed my purse and jacket. I think I'll be going too. Sarah, wait, Mark started, but I was already walking toward the door, 5 years of pent-up humiliation finally giving way to something that felt remarkably like triumph. Behind me, I heard Diane's brittle voice. Well, I never would have expected. I didn't stay to hear the rest. I drove aimlessly for an hour after leaving Diane's house, emotions cycling between vindication and disbelief. My phone buzzed constantly, mostly texts from Mark, but also one from Bethany that simply read, "Holy shit." Eventually, I pulled into a roadside diner, the kind of unpretentious place Diane would never set foot in. I ordered coffee and finally checked my messages. Mark had left 7 voicemails, each more concerned than the last. "Please call me," the final one said. "I'm so proud of you, and I'm so sorry." I texted him my location, and 30 minutes later, the bell above the diner door jingled as he walked in. He slid into the booth across from me, looking simultaneously odd and remorseful. "You built a company," he said, wonder in his voice, "and Gerald Winters is funding it." "I did," I confirmed. "I wanted to tell you when it was certain." "Why didn't you tell me you were even working on this?" I stirred my coffee, searching for the right words. At first, it was just an idea. Then it became something I needed to accomplish on my own, without the Harris name or connections. And honestly, I was afraid of your family's reaction, that they'd dismiss it or take over or somehow make it another thing I wasn't doing right. Mark reached across the table for my hand. "I've let you down," he said quietly. "I knew how they treated you, and I didn't do enough to stop it." "No, you didn't," I agreed. We sat in silence for a moment before he spoke again. "You should have seen what happened after you left. Dad started asking Gerald questions about your company before he left. Then he turned to Mom and said, 'Perhaps we should have paid more attention.' I've never seen her speechless before." Despite everything, I smiled slightly at the image. "Bethany cornered me, demanding to know what else you've been hiding. I think she's actually impressed," Mark continued. "And Mom, well, she's doing that thing where she pretends she always supported you." "Classic Diane," I muttered. Mark took a deep breath. "I want to invest in your company, not Harris family money, my money, the inheritance from my grandfather that I control." I shook my head. "That's not why I did this, Mark." "I know," he said quickly, "but I believe in you. I always have, even when I didn't show it well. Let me support you now, as a proper partner should." Over the next week, everything changed. Gerald's investment was formalized. I gave notice at my old job and moved into real office space. My small team of contractors became full-time employees. Mark took a leave of absence from his father's practice to help with the business operations. Diane called 3 times before I finally answered. "I may have misjudged you," she said, the closest thing to an apology her pride would allow. "Yes, you did," I replied simply. "The annual charity gala is next month," she continued, as if I hadn't spoken. "The committee would love to highlight your rural healthcare initiative. It would be the perfect opportunity to introduce you to some influential people." I almost laughed at the irony. Now she wanted to show me off. "I'll think about it," I said, knowing I probably wouldn't go. The real surprise came 2 weeks later when Richard showed up at my office unannounced. He looked uncomfortable in the startup's casual environment, but something in his expression had changed. "I've been reviewing your telemedicine platform," he said without preamble. "The technical specifications are impressive, but there's a gap in cardiovascular services." I tensed, waiting for criticism. Instead, he said, "I'd like to bring on some colleagues from my practice as consultants, if you're amenable." It wasn't an apology, but it was recognition, professional respect I'd never received from him before. "I'd be open to discussing it," I said carefully. Richard nodded, then added awkwardly, "Diane means well. We come from a certain background. Change is difficult." "I know where she comes from, Richard. The problem is she never bothered to know where I come from." He looked at me with new eyes. "No, I suppose we didn't." The most profound change wasn't in my in-laws, though. It was in my marriage. Mark and I had painful, necessary conversations about the dynamics we'd both enabled. We started therapy. He admitted feeling trapped between loyalties. I admitted building walls to protect myself. "I fell in love with you because you were different from everyone in my world," he told me one night. "Then I spent years letting them try to change you." 6 months after Gerald Winters walked into that anniversary dinner, my company launched its pilot program in 3 rural counties. The preliminary results exceeded even our optimistic projections. Gerald had proven to be a hands-off investor who trusted my vision. Bethany, surprisingly, became one of our strongest advocates, connecting us with her law firm's healthcare clients. "I might have been a little jealous," she admitted over lunch one day. "You built something real. I just took the path that was expected." As for Diane, our relationship remains complicated. She's made efforts, awkward, sometimes tone-deaf efforts, to understand my world. She sent an extravagant flower arrangement when we secured our first hospital contract. Old habits die hard. Last week, Mark and I hosted a dinner party in our modest apartment. Nothing fancy, just takeout containers and mismatched glasses. Gerald came, bringing his granddaughter who's pre-med. Richard and Diane came too, Diane looking only mildly uncomfortable with the paper plates. As I watched her attempt small talk with my development team, I realized the ultimate triumph wasn't making her respect me. It was no longer needing her to. Standing in my company's new offices a year later, I sometimes think back to that night, how one act of kindness completely redirected my life's trajectory. Not because helping Gerald led to funding, but because it gave me the courage to finally stand in my truth. My mother-in-law still makes comments occasionally. Old habits die hard, but now they slide off me like water. Success is a powerful shield, yes, but self-worth is an even stronger one. I didn't need Gerald Winters to validate me. I needed to stop seeking validation from people who were determined not to give it. The irony isn't lost on me that in trying to prove myself worthy of the Harris family, I built something that made them want to prove themselves worthy of me. If you're watching this and feeling underestimated or overlooked, remember, sometimes the people closest to us are the least equipped to see our potential. Don't let their limitations become yours. Build your dreams quietly if you must, but build them. Your vindication may not arrive in the dramatic fashion mine did, with a millionaire investor walking into a dinner party, but it will come in its own way, in its own time. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more real-life experiences about family dynamics, personal growth, and unexpected victories. Share in the comments if you've ever had a moment where everything changed, when the underdog finally had their day. Sometimes the greatest triumph isn't proving others wrong. It's remembering that you never needed their approval in the first place.